Welcome everyone, and thank you for joining Tricycle's online practice session today. We began these sessions in response to the pandemic to serve as a forum for speaking to the moment and practicing with the challenges that we're facing. So in the same spirit, we'd like to start today by acknowledging the immense pain around the murder of George Floyd and the continued fight for racial justice in the United States that is on many of our hearts and minds at this time. And to speak more on this, our guest today is Oren J. Sofer, a teacher of Buddhist meditation and nonviolent communication. Oren is a member of the Spirit Rock Teachers Council and is the author of Say What You Mean, a mindful approach to nonviolent communication, and co-author of Teaching Mindfulness to Empower Adolescents. Today, we're on a Zoom webinar, so participant audio and video are off. And we're recording the session for anyone who's unable to attend live. You can view the recordings as well as the schedule for upcoming sessions at tricycle.org/live. And you can also make a donation at that tricycle.org/live to support these free offerings. And we will have time for Q&A towards the end of the call. And you can post your questions in the Q&A panel that's accessible below the video screen. And we'll try and get to as many questions as possible towards the end of the call, which should go on for about an hour. And if you're tuning in from Facebook Live, you can post a question in the comment field and we'll add it to the list. And thank you so much, Oren, for being with us today. And I'll turn it over to you now.
Thank you, Amanda. Well, good morning, good afternoon, everyone. If we haven't met, as Amanda said, my name is Oren J. Sofer, and it's a real honor to be here with you today. I want to thank Tricycle Magazine for inviting me and also for holding these sessions and providing the space for us to be together, to practice, to connect with our hearts, and to open to the truth of this moment, the truth of this world that we're living in, and all of the changes, the suffering, and the potential for transformation that we are seeing every day right now. I'm speaking to you from my home here in Richmond, California, and I don't know about you, but it's been a really difficult few weeks. The pandemic has been its own kind of challenge in many ways. And then the series of murders of African Americans, public murders here in the United States over the last few weeks, culminating in the murder of George Floyd, has brought once again to the fore the systemic violence and structural inequities of our society, hopefully in a way that is impossible to turn away from. So I wanted to talk a little bit today and practice together with meeting this moment, which is really the heart of our practice. It can be overwhelming to turn towards and acknowledge the immensity of the suffering, the outrage, the pain, the violence that's occurring, particularly for those of us like myself who have white skin privilege, who don't live on a daily basis with the crushing effects of racism and oppression, both on an individual level and on a structural level in society. The teachings of the Buddha in some ways are very simple, in that they point to the reality that we live in an interconnected world where every event, every situation, every moment arises due to certain causes. And the great kind of opportunity and invitation of the practice is to learn how to quiet the mind, how to steady the heart enough so that we can begin to observe in our own direct experience the key relationships of cause and effect in terms of what leads to more stress and suffering and what leads out of that predicament of entanglement and suffering and oppression individually, relationally, and collectively. And so what we are seeing on a mass scale, again from the perspective of the Dharma, is the lawful unfolding of causes and conditions. Stretching back hundreds of years, stretching back centuries, the history of this country that was built upon attempted genocide and the enslavement of Africans. Dr. King said during the summer of riots in the 1960s, even as he condemned the violence, he said, "A riot is a language of the unheard. And what is it that America has failed to hear?" And he pointed out, he said, certain conditions continue to exist in our society that have to be condemned as vigorously as we condemn violence. And many of the protests that are happening are very peaceful. I would say the majority, and the majority of those out in the streets are there with nonviolent intentions. So from the perspective of our practice, we can connect to and understand what's happening as the result of not only the last few months and years, but centuries of unheard voices, of those who are oppressed, of those who don't have the dignity, the justice, the opportunity that are afforded to others in our society based on our gender, our skin color, our religion, our ability, our sexual orientation. So the question then arises, what's my role? How do I relate? How do I respond? This is, I think, the question for our times, really. What's my role? What's my role in this? What's my place in all of this? And it's easy to give kind of sound bites, you know. I think the real invitation of a human life is to grapple with the difficult questions. I was born Jewish. My cultural history, religious history, my ancestors are Jewish, and the word for the people of the Jewish faith, the children of Israel, this word Israel means to wrestle, to struggle, to wrestle. And it's the invitation in my ancestral tradition to wrestle with meaning. So why do I bring this in? Maizumi Roshi said that the point of this practice is to face your life completely and exactly as it is. And that takes a certain kind of courage and a certain determination and willingness to stay engaged with the difficult and uncomfortable areas, personally and collectively. And I think that's what this moment can call us into, in saying, what's my role here? The first aspect of that, what's my role here, is really to begin to take care of what's happening here. We can't be of any help to anyone. We can't step into our power. We can't find our voice. We can't support leadership and fight for justice when we are unraveled, when we are overwhelmed, when we ourselves are crushed. So however you identify whatever your social location is in this world, whether you have white skin privilege and you're dealing with feelings of guilt and shame and overwhelm and paralysis, whether you have dark skin and you are experiencing feelings of outrage and deep pain and anger and despair, whatever is arising for us, whether you're Asian, indigenous, multiracial, and the range of experiences that we have, each from our own unique and specific place in this world, To respond, the first step is to step back and take care of the heart. Otherwise, we run the risk of acting from anger, from fear and hatred. Anger is a very healthy emotion. It's often misunderstood because anger is protective. It comes from a part of the mind that discerns and sees something out of alignment. It says, no, this is not okay. This is not safe. This is not just. This is not equitable. When we don't attend to that anger, it can move into hatred, perpetuating the delusion of separation, the sense of otherness. So we take care of our heart in order to access the goodness that's here and to have a solid foundation of clarity and love and compassion from which to engage. So what's my role? Well, first, my role is to take care of my own home, my own heart. Now, that doesn't mean that we need to be perfect somehow emotionally. We need to be over everything. If you're, have white privilege like I do, that you need to read every single book and do every single course on being an ally and anti-racist before you can act. Not at all. It means that in the process of our life, we are attending to what's real and true and present for us, rather than pushing it away, avoiding it, stepping over it, pretending it's not there, or acting it out. So we take care of the heart. Then, particularly for those of us who occupy positions of privilege and power in society, I think for me, in terms of what I've learned as a heterosexual male, a Jewish white man in this culture, in areas related to justice and equity, my next move is to step back and listen. And this is deeply embedded in the Buddhist tradition. The beginning of the Noble Eightfold Path is right view. What does right view mean? Right view means that we have an accurate and aligned understanding of the causes and the conditions that are arising of our life. How does that arise? How do we arrive at an accurate understanding that's aligned with the truth of things? The Buddha was very clear about this. He said there are two factors, there are two things that support the arising of right view, wise view. This kind of enlightened understanding that perceives accurately through the veils of delusion and ignorance and conditioning. So he said, one, your own deep and careful attention. Right? This means that we need to look very closely, not only at our own mind and heart, as is encouraged in the technologies of meditation in the Buddhist tradition and many other contemplative traditions, but we need to look very closely and carefully at our history, at the structures of our society, at our relationships, at the kinds of impulses and biases that arise in our life and our relationships. We need to study it really carefully because we've all been programmed by society. That's what it means to grow up as a human being. We become socialized and we internalize the messages, the biases, the assumptions, the dynamics of whatever society we live in. So the first cause for the arising of right view is our own careful and deep attention. So this is why education and learning is so important, to expose ourselves to new points of view and frameworks and understandings in order to be able to analyze and understand what's happening from a different perspective. But that's not all. Right? If we only had our own mind and investigation to rely on, I don't know about you, but my understanding would be very limited in this life. We learn from each other. And so the Buddha said the second cause for the arising of right view is what's known as the voice of another. the voice of another. And I love that. This is a sense of something from outside touching us, coming in. A voice, a call. And what the Buddha is pointing to here is the insight, really, that we can't see our own shortcomings. We don't know what we don't know. That's why we need each other to point things out. As a good friend of mine and another Dharma teacher, we play this game where we give each other feedback in a loving way. And the analogy that's used to talk about how we give feedback, how we hold up a mirror to one another and say, you know, you might want to look at that, is if you're out to lunch with a good friend and they've got something in their teeth, you know, you say, hey, you've got something there. You've got a piece of spinach, you might want to just, right? We don't let them walk around the whole day with this, you know, thing stuck between their teeth. It's not because we're trying to shame them or make them feel bad. It's because we care. And we say, you know, that's not probably how you want to show up in the world. So the voice of another is this capacity to receive, to learn from others. And to do that, we have to be willing to listen. Right? We have to be willing to temporarily put aside our own views, our own beliefs, our own assumptions, our own ideas, our own analyses, and say, well, let me see how it is for you. Maybe there's something for me to learn here. So what's my role? How do I relate and respond to what's happening? And there's so much happening, whether we're talking about COVID-19, the cries and demands for justice and equity, the deepening and expanding suffering of income inequality, the growing climate crisis. We're at an inflection point as a human species. And all of these are interconnected. They're not separate, these issues. It's too much for any one person to do. So this question of what's my role is essential to see, where do I fit in this? What's my piece to play? We take care of the heart, and then we step back, we listen. We use our own deep and careful attention, but we also open to the wisdom and the voice of others. And in particular, seeking out the voices that might be different from ours, that have different life experience, rather than staying within the echo chamber of our own bubble. As we do this, as we engage in this process of tending to the heart, humbling ourselves to step back and listen, things come together. If we quiet the heart enough and listen deeply, we will know what to do. We will know where we are called. Not every one of us will be out in the streets protesting for a variety of reasons. Maybe you're immunocompromised. Maybe you have young children at home and you feel concerned for your own safety, your responsibilities to them. Maybe your work doesn't allow you to get out in the streets. Maybe you have other reasons of your own. But there's a part that each of us can play, a role that each of us can play. So the third kind of aspect is to respond with love. And this movement of response, of acting from love and compassion, this is the fruit of practice. This is wise action. This is deeply embedded within the Buddha's teachings. The more clearly we see, the more the mind comes into harmony and balance with the way things are, the less self-centered our life is, the more the heart naturally responds with compassion to suffering and says, here, let me help. If you're stepping on someone else's toes and they say, hey, that hurts, you step back, you say, oh, I'm so sorry. I'll be more careful next time. So this is the work for each of us to do, I believe, to ask ourselves, what's our role? So I hope these reflections are useful in some way, or at the very least, encouraging and uplifting. I thought we could do a little bit of meditation now, and actually use some of the suggestions I've made in terms of taking care of the heart, stepping back and listening, and seeing what we feel called, how we feel called to engage. So we'll sit for 15 or 20 minutes, and then we'll have some time at the end for questions and discussion. So if you haven't already, I invite you to go ahead and find a comfortable posture. Maybe take a deep breath. Do whatever helps you to shift gears, to turn your attention inwards. You can either close your eyes if that feels comfortable, or just gaze down at the ground in front of you. And I invite you to begin by just noticing the places where your body touches the ground. Contact with the seat or the chair, your feet on the floor. And see if you can let your attention begin to come into your body and down to the ground. Feeling the steady support of the earth. And just letting anything and everything that's happening in your body, your heart, and your mind be held. Be held by that grounded, steady contact with the earth. And as you tune in to those sensations, just feeling the overall sense of your body, whether you're sitting or reclining, standing or moving. This precious human body, this sensitive, vulnerable, pulsing, breathing human body. And seeing if you can bring a quality of tenderness and care to your own experience right now as you begin to just tune in to your breath, if that feels supportive. If not, you can lightly rest your attention anywhere else in your experience, with your hands, with sound, just finding an anchor, a ground. And as you settle into presence in the body, just checking in with your heart. How are you doing right now? And making space to honor the truth of whatever's present, however intense or subtle, pleasant or unpleasant. Even if what's present for you is feeling numb, checked out, can you bring some caring, loving attention to that? So we tend to the heart patiently, lovingly, and with a sense of balance. So if you're experiencing anything that feels overwhelming, like it's too much, then you want to step back a little bit. You kind of take a break, shifting your attention to something else that feels more soothing or settling. Whether it's sounds, opening your eyes, feeling your hands or feet. We'll see if you can keep putting down the thoughts and the stories and bringing your attention into the direct experience of your body. The different sensations and emotions that are moving through. Holding it all with the spirit of warmth and tenderness. And so intending to the heart, we are already beginning to step back and listen. One way of understanding the essence of this meditation practice is as a kind of deep listening. And as we all know, to really listen requires some attention, some energy, some interest and care. We have to be willing to really be here. And so you might see if this metaphor of listening deeply begins to shift anything in your own experience. What would it be like to listen deeply to your breath, to the feelings, moods, and emotions that are passing through your heart, even to the thoughts that come and go. And beginning to make space or sense the space for all of it. And there's room here for everything. And so as we sit quietly, if you like, just inviting this question, what's my role? Where do I feel called to respond with love? And then just listen. Make space for whatever comes. And the heart speaks in different languages, so sometimes what comes might not make sense. It might be a feeling, an image, a memory. And just stay with it. See if you can just receive and attend to whatever arises with these same qualities of care, interest, and balance. It's not a demand that we're making of ourselves, it's an invitation, it's an exploration. So in a couple minutes, we'll bring our meditation to a close. So as we begin to transition, first, if you want, I invite you to become aware, just in your own mind, your own heart, of all of us practicing together right now, spread out over the entire globe. More than 600 of us here on the call. Each attending to their own heart, sincerely asking this question: how do I respond with love? What's my role? And feeling the strength, the collective strength of that. We're not alone in this journey, we're not alone in this struggle to rebuild our world in a more just and equitable way, in a way that serves the life of all creatures and all beings. And so feeling the collective strength of our intentions, we can also share the beauty and the goodness of this practice. So in whatever way is authentic for you, if you like, just offering it outwards. May any healing, any strength, any clarity from our practice be shared fully and widely with all those struggling for safety, for justice, for life. with all those who can't breathe. Thank you so much for your practice. As I said, it's really an honor, really a privilege to be here with you. Before we shift to the Q&A, if we're just meeting and the way that I think about or express things speaks to you, I wanted to extend a warm invitation to join me and the Barry Center for Buddhist Studies for a free online course that's coming up in a couple of weeks on wise speech, how to take our practice and our values into our conversations and relationships. One of the main ways we can engage and act is through our conversations in the relationships that we have in our life and speaking to our values. And so in this 6-week course, we'll be looking at the Buddhist teachings on wise speech and how to engage those in our life. So I'll put the link in the chat here on my website, orenjsofer.com. You can find more information about the 6-week course with the Barry Center for Buddhist Studies. Open invitation, the course is by donation. So we have some time left to look at your questions. Invite Amanda to come back on and join me and explore what else you'd like to discuss.
Thank you, Oren. Okay, we will be opening up to questions now. Okay, our first question is from Anji. How do I stay open in the heart over and over again when the one who steps on my foot over and over again has no intention of apologizing? How does nonviolent communication fit into my own agency in a situation like this?
Thank you, Anji. Thank you for the question. She's obviously taking this analogy that I was using of oppression as someone stepping on your foot. And oftentimes it's much more, as we have seen so tragically, than stepping on someone's foot. Keeping the heart open doesn't mean that we don't speak forcefully. It doesn't mean that we don't fight back. We can be very, very forceful with complete love. So if your child is running out into the street and there's a lot of traffic, you yell and scream and say stop, and you grab that child as forcefully as possible with all of the love in your heart, right? You don't engage in dialogue and say, I'm really worried because that's dangerous and I want you to stay safe. You stop the child. And you're not coming from hatred. You're coming from love and protection. And I think that this is one of the most common misunderstandings of contemplative practice, Buddhist practice, and nonviolent, not only nonviolent communication, but nonviolence in general, that it means being passive. Nonviolence means that we are not creating an enemy in our own mind, and we're not acting from hatred or from the delusion of separation. That our response and our action is deeply rooted in a felt understanding of our shared humanity, the sense that my liberation and freedom is bound up with yours, and that you who are stepping on my foot are also suffering, not equally, but that the delusion that you are operating under and the conditions that blind you to my humanity are limiting your capacity to be alive fully as a human. And so my response comes out of care and love, not just for my own safety and well-being and that of my people, but also for yours. So nonviolent communication fits in terms of fully empowering us to be aware of our needs, and to have the courage to speak up for those in the way that's most authentic, and when the resources are there, in a way that has the greatest likelihood to produce change. So I hope that's helpful, Angie. It's a short answer to a very deep and large question.
Okay, our next question is from Adrian. They ask, how does one balance righteous indignation and anger against right speech?
Thank you, Adrian or Adrian. Yeah, righteous indignation and anger. Again, a really powerful and deep question. You know, I think for me, there's something about making space for the imperfection of our humanity. And, you know, I'm assuming most, if not all of us on this call, if you have a contemplative practice, if you're following the teachings of the Dharma, the vision of this path is so beautiful. It's so inspiring. And here we are, each of us muddling through in our lives and, you know, just doing our best. The teachings are like a beacon. They're a compass. It says, go in this direction. It doesn't say you have to be at the goal in order to act. So the teachings on right speech, which are vast and very specific in terms of the not just what we say, but why we say it, where we're coming from, how and when we say it, all of those are taken into account. They say, look, orient yourself in this direction. Set this as your compass. It doesn't say we have to be perfect. That's why it's a practice. That's why this is a path. So the thing that I would look to, particularly, you know, I mentioned anger before, and the power of anger to reveal injustice, the power of anger to connect us with our vitality and our energy based on clear discernment. The piece that I would want to look to in your question is the sense of the righteousness. The righteous indignation, when I hear that term, it's this sense of this deep commitment to morality and ethics and justice and equity mixed in with self-view, mixed in with moral superiority. I'm better than. That's the piece you want to look to. Because that's the piece that's first and foremost going to imprison your own heart. Because it places us, again, it's a reenactment of the very separation and sense of domination that is at the root of oppression. So we want to observe that very pattern in our own mind and begin to bring the light of wisdom to that process. As we do that, we're able to touch into and reveal the deeper current of love and care and fierce protection beneath the anger. And that's the energy we want to follow, not the contracted sense of a self who's better than, which is only going to perpetuate the sense of violence. So again, much more to be said, a really powerful question. Thank you, and I hope what I've offered is helpful in some way.
Okay, another question. Okay, we have a question from Mercedes. Can you speak to responding with love to someone with a defended and closed heart? I'm thinking specifically of a cousin who is a police officer and sees life as good versus evil. I suspect wants to connect, but I don't know how. My impulse is to shut him out myself.
Thank you. Thank you, Mercedes, and thank you to your cousin for his service and putting his life in harm's way. Speaking to someone, I'm looking at your question here, speaking to someone with a defended and closed heart who sees life as black and white, good and evil. Again, so just going back to those 3 steps that I talked about before. First, we have to take care of our own heart. Then we step back and listen deeply, and then respond with love. So I think the first thing to attend to is the impulse you're noting to shut down in yourself, right? So make space for that, honor it. Everything that arises in our experience can teach us if we let it. This is the beauty of the Dharma. No part needs to be left out. So that impulse to withdraw, to shut down, to just push him away, stay with it. It's painful. It hurts to not be able to connect with someone we love, to want to reach out and not feel them there. And in defending against that pain, we shut down, we pull away. So make space for the part that wants to shut down and see what that reveals. It may put you in touch with the deep care, the deep pain of this relationship. So this is kind of the first area to explore, so that you're attending to your own heart and the motivations that you're coming from. In terms of how to engage, there's a lot that can be said. I'll just name a couple of things here. One is you want to do some work internally to humanize your cousin, I think it was, or maybe just a family member or friend. This looks like you didn't say. You want to make some work to humanize them. So this person who sees everything as good and evil, to recognize that view is serving some deeper value for him or her. That they're probably wanting to support healthy values in our communities, and their way of seeing things is an expression of that. So even though you disagree, I'm not suggesting you have to ascribe to their worldview, but can you get underneath the specifics of the worldview to connect with the deeper human values in this person's heart, to see their goodness? That's what the Dharma teaches us. That's what nonviolence teaches us, is to see the humanity underneath not only the actions that we may disagree with, but the very views and beliefs that we may oppose. So as you start to do that, as you start to touch into this person's humanity, their good intentions, which are there if you look for them, that's going to start to give you more space inside. And then the creativity can come. Generally, one of the best ways to connect with someone who doesn't want to connect is to keep things light. Because the more you try to connect, the more they're going to pull away, because they basically told you explicitly or implicitly, I don't want to do that, right? So the more you try to do it in your way, you're going to get into a tug of war. So talk about other things. Spend time. How are your kids? How's work? How is all of this that's happening for you? I imagine it must be hard being a police officer to see everything that's happening. You must have a lot of different feelings. Maybe that's too deep. Maybe you want to keep it lighter. But essentially what I'm pointing to is if you can spend time having conversations about other things and just connecting lightly as human beings, you begin to develop more of a foundation of shared relationship. And then it's from that foundation of shared relationship, as you start to have some connection, that you can begin to move into other territories. So again, those are a few suggestions. Thank you so much, Mercedes.
All right, I think we have time for about 2 more questions.
Yeah.
Okay, so this next question comes from Rally. I'm feeling disappointed in humanity and having a hard time engaging in the conversation of the moment. I'm struggling to consolidate the good and evil in humanity, as in, how can we be so benevolent and so evil at the same time?
Thank you, Rally. Yeah, I share your disappointment. The Dharma teaches us that the question of why is not a useful question. We want to understand deeply, why are we made this way? Why are there these different impulses, these different energies of, in the Dharma, it's not framed as good and evil, it's framed as skillful and unskillful, bright and dark, beautiful and uplifting, or leading to suffering. And kusala and akusala is the Pali term. The sense of these are the valences of karma in our actions of thought, speech, and body. We want to understand deeply. The Buddha said you can't figure it out where it comes from. This is just the realm that we're in. It's like saying, why is there gravity? I hate it. I keep dropping this cup and it keeps falling and I don't want that to happen. It's like, well, I can spend my whole life arguing against that, or I can learn how to operate within the laws of gravity. So what the Dharma is inviting us to do is to say, you can transform your experience of this realm and steer your life in the direction of the bright, uplifting, and beautiful. And the more you do that, the more it gathers the momentum, the more your own heart and mind will be filled with beauty and goodness. And that itself is a protection. As the goodness in our own heart grows, the response to the darkness in the world is compassion rather than despair. Because we see it through the lens of wisdom and through the lens of connection, which is love. And as we see it through that lens, there's the tragedy of what's possible and the heartbreak. And then the heartbreak doesn't have this quality of something that's oppressive, that's grinding us down. It has the quality of opening to everything with goodness. Stay with it. We're all in this together and we're all grappling with those questions. Thank you. Thank you, Rally. Maybe last one.
Yeah, so our last question is from Rima. How do you get to your own heart emotionally to take care of it versus intellectually?
Thank you, Rima. It can take time. So a few things that you can explore, Rima. Learning to feel your body is essential. So what helps you be in your body? Is it exercise? Is it dance? Is it massage, a self-massage or massage from someone else? Is it being in nature? Is it taking a shower or a bath? So we need to be able to feel the body. The heart, the human heart, is not the physical organ, it's the seat of consciousness and feeling. And this is a somatic embodied experience, the human heart. So we need to be able to shift the center of our attention from thinking, from the realm of thought, which is what the dominant society conditions us to do, is to identify with and to locate our awareness in thought, because that's primarily and predominantly all that's valued is the intellect. So we need to unlearn that. None of us come into this world only being in the realm of thought. In fact, we start just being in the realm of the body. So this is intimately and deeply our nature. It's not something you need to create. It's about unlearning and returning to something that's quite natural and innate. So what helps you connect with your body, and then do that more physically? You start to feel the muscles, the heat, the aching, the tension, the flowing, the warmth, the cool, the hardness, the softness, the tickling, okay? You're starting to enter the realm of sensation. This is our life. And then bring your attention here to the center of your chest, behind the sternum. And just rest your attention there. See what comes. So start by feeling your body. Then second, start to feel what's here. And it doesn't matter what you do or don't feel. That's not what you're looking for. What you're looking for is to just keep coming back here. Anything can come up. Numbness, blank. Could be an image, a dark black wall, a rock, something sharp or jagged. Great, stay with that. The psyche reveals itself and unfolds itself in its own language, in its own way. Our work is to then just receive it and honor it and allow it to reveal itself to us. There's a couple of other things you can do also. One, in all of this, your intention is very important. You want to take care that you're doing this, that you're recognizing your own intention behind it, rather than coming from a place of, I'm going to rewind that sentence and start it over again. Recognize the wholesome, healthy intention behind this of wanting to be more connected, wanting to open your heart, wanting to love, and be wary of any unskillful intentions of, I'm not good enough, I'm broken, I need to do better, there's something wrong with me, I have to get this figured out right away. The image that I like to use sometimes is it's like the heart's like a flower bud. And so in the spring, when the plants have their flowers, they open in their own time. And if we come and start trying to pry those petals open, what's going to happen? It's going to hurt the flower. So you just want to just keep shining the light of awareness, the warmth of compassion. It's like the sunlight and the rain on your heart. It will open in its own time. You don't have to force it. In fact, the more you pull and tug at it, the more it will close up. It needs the space and the trust to open. So one other thing you can do here is once a day, twice a day, say when you first wake up, before you go to bed at night, or during your formal practice, you just say something to your own heart that's authentic, like, I'm here and I'm ready and willing to feel whatever you want me to know. Or, I'd like to spend more time together. Or, I'm ready to listen. Whatever it is, you need to find your own words, but you just send that message to your own psyche, sincerely, and then let it go. If you do that every day, you just plant that seed, that seed will take root and it will grow. So, I hope that's helpful, Rally. Thank you.
All right, wonderful. Thank you so much, Oren, for your helpful words and for sharing this opportunity with us today. And thank you so much to everyone for joining us on this call. And we have another online practice next Tuesday at the same time with Joseph Bobrow Roshi. So please keep checking tricycle.org/live for upcoming sessions and to view the recordings. And we are providing these sessions for free. So if you want to help support this and our other efforts, please consider donating at tricycle.org/donate. And I hope everyone is staying healthy and safe. And I'll turn it back to you, Oren, for closing words.
Thank you, Amanda. Again, I want to express my deep gratitude to you, Amanda, and Tricycle for inviting me and creating this space. And keep going, everyone. Don't give up. Stay engaged. There's so much goodness. There's so much potential when we work together and when we have the courage to take care of our heart and ask the hard questions. Hope to see you again, maybe in the BCBS Wise Speech course or elsewhere down the road. Many blessings, everyone. Be well.